tonight with Stell Bailey, International Advocate. I'm Libby Levette, Florida Statewide Advocate, and we're here to discuss the impact of cancer-causing chemicals in Satellite Beach's water. Satellite Beach, known for its proximity to a military base on Florida's Space Coast, has unfortunately gained a reputation as a cancer cluster. The Department of Defense's utilization of PFAS-containing firefighting foam has resulted in a lingering legacy of pollution that casts a shadow over the city. Over the years, residents have been sharing their accounts of abnormal cancer cases, with entire families being impacted in a manner reminiscent of Camp Lejeune. Join us as we discuss our efforts in Brevard County to unveil the contamination in waterways, soil, and air caused by the aerospace industry and the Department of Defense. So, how did you begin this work?
I began this work after my family experienced very unusual cancer diagnoses. And so it started in 2013. My uncle, not blood related, our family dog, myself, my little brother, and my father were diagnosed with cancer. And it began our journey of trying to understand why this was happening to our family. Experts, oncologists, epidemiologists would be coming into our rooms, would be questioning where we grew up. That was a common question we got. Where did you grow up? And I grew up on Florida's Space Coast in Brevard County, Florida. But I got involved with the Satellite Beach case specifically in the beginning of 2018, when the Department of Defense released their PFAS report. And I discovered that Patrick Air Force Base, now known as Patrick Space Force Base, had some of the highest levels of PFAS contamination found in a well in the nation, the third highest in the nation. And so that really started making me dig into the area, legacy contamination from Patrick Air Force Base, and questioning, crowdsourcing cancer cases and things like that. And so that's how I began my work. I started collaborating with an oncologist that went to Satellite High School, and I connected with Satellite High graduates, and we just combined our efforts to really seek why so many young people in the area were getting cancer.
And you were able to actually bring the renowned Erin Brockovich to the area. So it was so significant that it garnered her attention. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So, we were spearheading some big campaigns throughout different social media platforms by knocking on doors, sending mailers, and crowdsourcing this information. And we were able to get in contact with Erin Brockovich and her team. And they were already planning a tour throughout the state of Florida. And so they wanted to make one of their stops here in Brevard County, Florida. So we hosted a community meeting in Satellite Beach, Florida in 2018, where she helped educate and bring even more awareness to this situation by just being present.
That's amazing that you were able to get her attention. I mean, did it seem to make an impact? How was she received?
Yes, so the whole community was really, what would be the word? Anxious for her to come, but not in a bad way. I think that they just wanted answers, and a lot of people look up to Erin Brockovich. And so I think there was a little bit of closure for a lot of the cancer survivors to finally be acknowledged by somebody who's been in this work for so long. And that's really all they were ever asking for, is having somebody that said, what you're seeing and what you're feeling and what you're going through is not normal. And don't you ever allow anyone to tell you that this is normal. And we really needed that from her, because she's been through this. She's worked so many cases across the nation and globe. And to have her expertise and her experience was refreshing.
And it sounds like she validated a lot of concerns and even fears, to the extent that people were finally feeling like they were getting some answers. They weren't being necessarily gaslit. I know we use that term a lot. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about some other accomplishments that you've made, because you have done remarkable work nationwide I know that you've done some international documentaries on this topic since your discoveries, but you've been to Washington, D.C. several times. You've been very effective in your meetings with EPA officials. And can you tell us about your trips to Washington, D.C. and what you've been able to accomplish with these PFAS levels?
So my trips to Washington, D.C. has been, I've been bringing education in our work right there into DC. And the reason why I went to a federal level, I knew from the very beginning that I was going to have to go beyond my local government, beyond my state government. I had to go to the federal government because they're the ones that approve the DoD's budget. And so one of my main goals when I initially went in 2019 was we need to get our area on the map for cleanup. And so that was my initial goal when I went to Washington, D.C. And we were able to accomplish that by getting money put into the National Defense Authorization Act, also known as the NDAA, which is, their budget for the military. And we got a specific line for PFAS cleanup. And so it was just becoming recognized on a national level. It's a new contaminant, an emerging contaminant of concern. And so that was a big win for us to start getting funding. And then we got it into the infrastructure package. And then we also were able to get other funding allotted to different military, because we know that this AFFF came from the military. And we accomplished all of that by sharing our crowdsourced data and giving a visual to not just the cancer cases, but the pollution that we've mapped. And in 2019, we also shared with our Congress the formerly used defense site in South Patrick Shores, because in the process of investigating Satellite Beach, we uncovered a whole other environmental disaster, which is we learned that houses were built on top of an old military dump. Before Patrick was Patrick Air Force Base, it was a naval station. It was a naval base, right? So they used that land as a landfill, essentially, and they would throw stuff in there and they would light it on fire. And what they did is they covered it up and then built homes on top of it.
And so are there cancer cases there?
Yes, there are. And a majority of the young adults who got cancer in the 90s, because it was already investigated in the 90s, they had Hodgkin's lymphoma. A majority of them did live in South Patrick Shores. But the other concern was, why are all these high school students and young adults getting these what are supposed to be rare cancers? Hodgkin's is supposed to be a rare cancer. In fact, you work closely with law firms, and it's one cancer that isn't usually included in class action lawsuits because it's supposed to be rare. It's supposed to be 2 out of 100,000 people that get Hodgkin's, and you had 30 people get it in that one little area, like within a few blocks. So it was very alarming, and there were different experts across the nation that were trying to sound the alarm about the area back in the 90s.
It's interesting because would you think that lymphoma is rare today?
No, I don't. I do not. And I think the perfect example of that is what's happening with our vice president, who lived in Satellite Beach and just moved away this year in the summer, where, now he has his family going through testing, and one was just diagnosed with lymphoma. And I think it is because it's a mixture of our environmental exposures and I don't see I don't see us winning the war on cancer right now.
Yeah, it seems like where I've done just not anything near the research you have on lymphoma. So definitely I defer to you on all things factual. But it seems to me that lymphoma is actually something that in those rare cases historically, and I'm going back in my research because when I was doing some research, I went back to the old morbidity and mortality reports from the CDC on lymphoma, and it was generally found in the elderly community. So it was rare and usually found in the elderly community. And what I'm seeing is it's everywhere. It's not a demographic. It's all demographics. It's women, it's men, it's children, it's adults, it's elderly, it's babies, it's Caucasian, African American, Chinese. It's across the board. Everyone is being affected by this, to something that used to just be identified as a rare elderly lymphoma occurrence. Now it's not limited to those areas. I'd be interested to see what the mortality and morbidity weekly report is saying these days on lymphoma.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I do question the data that is being collected because, for instance, one of the things we went to Tallahassee for in 2019 is we, presented our crowdsourced data, and the fact that it wasn't matching up to the cancer data system that they hold in the state of Florida, which is a requirement. It's required for your cancer to be put into this system so they can keep up with things like cancer clusters. But it's interesting because they never find cancer clusters through that. It's always usually a concerned community member in the same case as Satellite Beach, where, you have an oncologist, somebody that sounds the alarm and they push for an assessment. And now they don't even designate cancer clusters anymore. I haven't seen one in a very long time, be classified as a cancer cluster. The last one I recall is in the acreage in Florida, and same situation there. They had to come forward to state agencies and fight and push for them to take a look into what was going on there. And to me, that's concerning in itself, because we live in 2023 where we're in an age of just amazing technology. We can send people to the moon and up in rockets, and we have all this just great technology. Why can't we, get this data right? Why can't we come up with a better system to help us identify these health issues happening in these communities? And so that's always been a concern of ours.
Those are very good questions, because we should be able to, you're right, and we can. And I have to think that it's by design. I have to think it's because if we report those numbers, then we have to explain those numbers. And I think there's a bit of normalizing that has happened, because there are so many cancer clusters. They're just not rare anymore. So why do we need to identify cancer clusters? And it plays into that narrative of, oh, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's everywhere.
And that's the narrative we continuously hear when we start to investigate a community. Satellite Beach isn't the only community we've investigated in South Patrick Shores. We've investigated Port St. John, where they're situated in between two power plants. We've investigated Kennedy Space Center workers who have been working out at the Kennedy Space Center are finding that they're having neurological diseases, high rates of that. We've got certain hotspots, is what I call it, in the toxic triangle on the Space Coast. But we've also been involved with other cases such as Mosaic, phosphate mining industry out in Central Florida, where Piney Point happened. And so we've extended because a lot of people are very appreciative of this crowdsourced data. And, we're working with other communities that are next to other bases in Florida and trying to help them not only get the crowdsourced data mapped, which is a task in itself, you have to.
Great job on
what
you've accomplished so far. By the way, I know that it is a nightmare for you to do that work, and it's never ending. And I am so appreciative of it.
It is a tedious work. You have to go through spreadsheets, and then we want to safeguard people's personal identifying information. So not only are you organizing the spreadsheets, but you have to duplicate them and then empty boxes that don't identify people or allow anyone to get their identifying information.
Right. Now, what is a PFAS task force?
Well, they put together a PFAS task force. It's just like have you heard of the algal bloom task force in Florida?
Which really isn't accomplishing much.
Exactly. I was really upset because I wrote letters to the legislator.
I'm so sorry. The cats just freaked out. Did you hear that?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay, well.
Okay. That's funny. My cat would do the same thing. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now I hear it. It's okay. No, but I was really upset because I noticed they put the polluters on this task force, the PFAS task force. Like, they've got the airports and all the people that have, used the AFFF or, DOD. But what I didn't see was a lot of like toxicologists, epidemiologists, oncologists, like anyone health related, or scientists or advocates that have been involved with the PFAS situation before they even knew what PFAS was. The state did. You know, we put PFAS on the map in Florida. So
it's the same theory as the Department of Health utilizing veterinarians to determine their policies regarding human health.
and you know, you speaking of that, I just have to bring this up. That's another thing that we're seeing a lot of is pet cancer. A lot of pets
Yes.
getting tumors and cancer in this area. And you know, even though we knew this was a problem here, we know that there's contamination in the water, there's contamination in the soil, and that there's a possibility of the air being impacted. You know, that's why we tell people you better be changing your air filters, because you know, there's other theory of how people are breathing in these toxins, and some of it's not a theory like the BMAA. We know for a fact now that people are breathing those in and getting ALS and certain diseases from long-term exposure of that. But it still feels like, you know, a part of our team was like, well, we have hope because we've been able to protect ourselves. We've all gotten filtration systems. And so I think that's why this recent diagnosis within our team, because, you know, he stepped up so much for the Satellite Beach community. He invested money to help us get testing, to help us get answers. He invested time in the 3-year study. He helped gather testing data, you know, and then for him to be now experiencing and dealing with this, it shook us to our core, because of course you start going through all of your data and your information thinking, what did we miss? So that's kind of the journey we're on right now, is kind of looking at because we always knew the fact that we found PFAS at such astronomical levels at Patrick, there was going to be other contaminants. In which we have learned there's legacy contamination from the aerospace industry. There's legacy contamination from the base. They like to say that it stays within a certain area, a certain boundary, but contamination knows no zip codes or boundaries.
That's correct.
And I do suspect that we're dealing with more than just PFAS contamination. And I think that will come out.
Well, absolutely. I think they've already determined that the lead byproduct and the fuel and all of that is it's bad. It's bad. It's death by 1,000 cuts for sure. And you know, you mentioned something about the filters. So I think it's extremely important. You know, Jeff and you had the benefit of research and discovery, and so many members of the community don't even know that this is happening. And that's one of the reasons that we do what we do, is to try to warn them. But I think the most important thing you can tell people, because a lot of people are overwhelmed, like, what can I do? And then they're told it's everywhere. What can I do? There is something you can do. Filter your water. Do not sit in your hot tub. Do not spend exorbitant amounts of time swimming in your pools. Chlorine does not kill PFAS. Filter your water. Most important, reverse osmosis, GAC, Stell, you want to talk on those filters?
So there's 2 specific filters that will filter out PFAS, which is granular activated carbon, also known as a GAC filter, and then reverse osmosis, an RO system. Most people, the most affordable one, especially in the military, because they move so much, most of the military service members will get the on-the-counter system, which just sits on your counter, but it filters it through. It's not ideal for large families, but it works for people that constantly move and have to get, you know, they get their new orders. Now you're going here. The next best thing is an under the sink system. You know, whether you choose RO, there's benefits to both, or GAC. I would personally choose the GAC. You could do that. And then some people choose to do whole home filtration systems, and that's going to be your most expensive option. And that's what Jeff did. So there's that. And then additional to that, we also do shower filters.
Yeah. Obviously the most, I'm trying to think of the words I want to use here. The best thing you could do is avoid, right? It's like, just don't go into Satellite Beach if you can avoid it.
Lessen your exposures.
Because you're inhaling those toxins. You are eating foods that may have been grown there if you're eating locally. You're washing your hands, you're drinking the water. Just avoid Satellite Beach. I mean, it is basically a beacon of PFAS that are going to attach to you and make you sick. Are they
And
going to make
I
everybody
think,
sick? No, because different people have different amounts of
mhm,
immunity and different
mhm,
genetic structures. So one
mhm,
person may look wonderful, may have a
mhm.
great result, may have no impacts, and the person right next to him may develop cancer and die. Do
I
you
think,
want to take that risk?
yeah, and I think it's so hard for people to wrap their heads around that. Like, they know that the area is riddled with these illnesses and these diseases, and it's usually the locals, the people that grew up there, that know somebody that had cancer or themselves have cancer. The newcomers, the people that just relocated there, the ones that haven't been there long enough to know or even be exposed long enough for something like this, they're usually the ones, or the ones that have financial interests, that want to sit there and say, this isn't a thing, this is a non-existent issue. And I think acknowledging it is the first step in order to make a difference and to make a change. And we're definitely questioning with what happened with his family this week. Is it safe to live here? We're definitely questioning. We're asking those questions
Can I
now.
ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you believe it's safe to live in Satellite Beach?
No, I don't think it's safe to live in Brevard County with the immense amount of polluters that are surrounding us. I think the pure sign of where we're headed is with the manatees and what's been going on with them, the canary in the coal mine.
I feel like the canary in the coal mine happened,
Mm-hmm.
and while it may have made the news, I don't think it made the impact.
Mm-mm.
I think so many people did not see that warning, and now it's no longer the canary in the coal mine. It's the human being in their house.
Yeah, and I think that's just, it's a hard thing to think about for people. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to think about it. They're like, if I get cancer, I get cancer. And I can tell you right now, you may think like that. You may think, oh, I'll take my chances. But once it happens, it uproots your entire life. And it is not something that you're like, I'll deal with it when it gets here, because it hits you like a ton of bricks. And it's you can't explain it unless you've been through it. So in our work, is we're really worried about our children, because they're the most susceptible. They're the ones that are going to be dealing with the highest exposures. And so one of the things that you and I have talked about is, how do we get filtration systems into the schools? Anything to add a layer of protection, right? But
Absolutely. And it's not just PFAS. The schools, many of them still have lead
yep.
pipes and have high concentrations of lead. The school that my youngest child went to in Volusia County, Chisholm Elementary, was closed for a little while because of their lead contamination. It's my understanding that they did not replace their pipes. So I'm not sure what happened, that they reopened their school. And there was a bill for a similar bill that was generated, I think, last year, but it died in
Mm-hmm.
education. And for me, I'm like, how does that bill die in education? I mean, I might have been able to wrap my head around one of the other committees, but in education, a bill
Yeah.
to filter our water died.
Mm-hmm. For our children, most importantly, to protect our children. Yeah,
And
it's mind
why? Because
blowing.
they think it would be an admission of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
You were actually told
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm. I was told that by my senator. I met with Senator Wright, and he was the one that sat down and told me, hey, we can't do that, because then we'd be admitting there's a problem. But everyone I've ever sat down with, they're like, yeah, I filter my water, but they won't admit it publicly, because at meetings they've been asked, and they're like, no, I drink it right from the tap. And it's infuriating as an advocate, sitting there going, you're lying, or you're either lying to me about filtering it. Which one is it? It's
Mm-hmm.
so difficult, because they tell you things behind closed doors, and then they're telling the public a different thing. And it's gut-wrenching for me, because I'm like, you're telling a cancer survivor, someone who watched her father seize up and have to go through something so horrendous, that it doesn't matter to you enough to protect our children and to make a difference in the world and to leave behind a better future. It's a multi-layered issue too. And I want to bring that up because so many people just want to point the finger at one thing. Oh, it's just Satellite Beach. It's not just a Satellite Beach issue. They want to just point it at Patrick Air. No, it's not just Patrick Air Force Base that's contributed to this issue. It's NASA. It's Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It's the cruise industry in our area. It's the power plants. They have legacy contamination, high levels of metal. And they also admitted that there was issues with asthma among children in Port St. John and high rates of blood cancer. So there's aerospace industry manufacturing. And I call the hotspots because we have a lot of formerly used defense sites. So if you look, we have a map on our website. And actually, I'm going to go there really quick just so that you guys can see. So this is the front of our page. But if you go to our data and maps, there's a Brevard County pollution map. And we share all of the industries and the manufacturing companies and some of the testing data that we've gotten. And you can look at these maps. And if you look down here at Melbourne, like there's certain areas that stick out to me. Satellite Beach is certainly one, but this area in Melbourne stands out to me because of all the manufacturing and all of the chemicals, especially where Far Chemical Company is. They have astronomical levels of PFAS in their area, and they've had chemical explosions. So this area, and then if you go up, you've got South Patrick Shores, which is right next to Patrick Air Force Base. So this really helps paint a picture. We even mapped the wastewater treatment plants throughout Brevard County because they're a major contributor to pollution.
Definitely.
So definitely take a look at this. There was a lot of time spent in it, and really consider and think about where
if
you're
only
living.
Jeff had something like this before he bought his property in
Right.
Satellite Beach, he wouldn't have bought his property in Satellite Beach.
Well, and they sell this picture of paradise. They sell this like, come move here, pristine waters. Yeah. I'm sorry, but we don't have pristine waters anymore. Have you seen our Indian River Lagoon? Maybe we should stop lying to people. But they're luring people with the promise of paradise, and they're delivering poison. I guess I just want to end this by saying, we got on here because we really wanted to inform people because there's a lot of new people. We're noticing we've got hundreds of requests coming into the groups, and we're really appreciative of your support. And just to end it out, do you want to tell them what they can do to take action?
Research PFAS contamination and its health risks, demand action, contact your elected officials and earn them to support stricter regulations and remediation efforts. Protect yourself, consider water and air filters, and choose PFAS-free products whenever possible. Spread awareness, share this video. Again, please reach out to your elected officials wherever you live and urge them to join the PFAS class action to clean up their municipal utilities. It costs them nothing to join. It is not an admission of guilt, and it is their duty to protect the residents of their community and clean up this mess. If they choose not to join the PFAS class action, you need to force your municipalities to clean it up and shoulder the expense.
And with that being said, I just want to also add in, please, if you live in Brevard County, email Commissioner Pritchett about MIMS drinking water. And because I've already emailed and communicated with the county about this class action lawsuit, and I have not seen any action taken yet. And that's a perfect example. We need more voices on it and more eyes on it, because when they know everybody is aware of it, they're more likely to take that action.
This week, you must be pretty upset when they deem that traces of cancer-causing chemicals is safe.
Well, when did the bar become set so low that any trace of any chemical was safe?